I made a video yesterday about Drake starting his Anita Max Win tour in February in Australia, and I thought that was going to be the last time I had to cover Drake for a little while. But y'all, I was wrong, because I woke up this morning to the news that Drake has pretty much just been called out by XXXTentacion's killer's lawyer over on the Law and Crime Network. Yeah. Now, y'all heard me right. Drake was pretty much just name dropped by the lawyer for the man who was convicted of killing XXXTentacion. And this is coming at a very coincidental time, right?
Hey, we back with another reaction. I don't want to talk too much, but I got to give y'all a brief on this. So y'all saw what Diddy, y'all saw what happened to Diddy when he tried to sue them real rich folk at the top, right? Now, I knew when he came against UMG, you got to realize those are the big money people. Drake and them little money may be big to us, but nah, them people who own them labels, those are the guys you don't want to mess with. As soon as that lawsuit went down with Diddy and Ciroc, that's when all that stuff came out about Diddy. Now, Drake decides to sue UMG, the big dogs. Look what happens. This guy comes up and says that, oh, okay, Drake has something to do with the XXX murder. Now, we've been hearing stuff about that for a long time, but it's been buried. But now, after Drake files a lawsuit against UMG, it's not too much of a coincidence that it came out now. So I don't know. I think this fall, I think this may be the fall of another Diddy-like situation with Drake, because you do not mess with them high-powered folks at the top. You don't even know who these people are. You never seen these people. You don't know what they look like. They could be walking in the midst of you. You don't even know who that. It could be them. These guys are powerful, and they can Diddy you at any moment. And I think Drake made a grave mistake when he decided to sue them folks. The same thing Diddy did when he sued them Ciroc folks. You feel what I'm saying? Well, let's get into the video and see. But Drake might be in great trouble.
All week, we've been talking about these petitions that Drake has filed to seek information that can help him file a lawsuit against his record label, UMG, which is also Kendrick Lamar's record label. Now, I say this is coming at a coincidental time because we haven't heard nothing about this XXXTentacion case in like a couple years now, right? It's been closed. People have been convicted. The trial is over, right? On April 6, 2023, all three people that were arrested and tried for this were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And then there's been no new updates in this case since, but then here we are the week that Drake decides he wants to go at his record label's neck, boom, implicated in a murder scheme. I can't lie, that's pretty wild. I've been seeing a lot of people saying that Drake going at his label like this was going to be the biggest mistake of his career, that he was about to give Michael Jackson, they was about to give him that Prince treatment. And I kind of shrugged it off like, I don't know about it, don't seem like too big of a deal. But man, coincidences, right? They can be strange. Now, for context, this theory that Drake may have somehow been involved in XXXTentacion's murder isn't a new theory. In fact, I made a video about this years ago, right? And I put it up on YouTube, and UMG actually requested a takedown of that video, not because I used any copyrighted music or anything like that, just because they didn't like that topic being out there. Now, if I'm not mistaken, a copy of that video that I made does still exist. It exists over on Rumble. And you know what? I'll go ahead and I'll link to this in the description if you guys want to go watch the video. It's a 28-minute breakdown about all of the evidence that seemingly points to Drake being involved. All right, well, I did that video a couple years ago, breaking it all down, but nothing ever came of it because when it was brought up in court, it was pretty much squashed on site. The judge really didn't want to hear none of it. They continued with trial, and like I said, the three people that were on trial for this were eventually convicted, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And that was the end of it, at least until this week, the week that Drake is taking shots at his label. Now, one of the guys that was convicted, his name was Dedrick Williams, and Dedrick Diedrich and his attorney, Mauricio Padilla, just filed a petition for an appeal. And in that petition, they point to Drake's alleged feud with the victim as proof that he could have been an alternate suspect in this case. A suspect that they weren't allowed to question, they weren't allowed to get a deposition from, and that the police in Florida refused to investigate. So I want to make clear here that they're not saying that Diedrich is innocent and he had nothing to do with it. His attorney is arguing that there was other people who could have been viewed as a suspect that the police failed to even look into. And when something like that happens, it could be argued that whoever was on trial, in this case Diedrich Williams and the other two guys, didn't get a fair trial because it wasn't investigated fully.
Well, let me just say this. So these guys get rich and just turn into gangsters. Like when, so Drake just putting hits on people now. We talking about Jimmy. We talking about Wheelchair, Degrassi. You feel me? We talking about you better find your love and this dude. Now he putting hits on niggas after they get rich. Like who? Bro, what's wrong with? Let's get to the video.
This to you guys. What that means is that the conviction of these guys could be looked at as a reversible decision because, like I said, it could be argued that there were other people that the police just refused to look into that could have proved there was more to the story, but we'll never know because they didn't allow it. It basically adds up to the exclusion of evidence that pointed the finger at somebody else. And it's kind of a big deal. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into this clip of Mauricio Padilla explaining why they have just name dropped Drake in this petition for an appeal.
Well, I am not arguing it. I'm not his appellate attorney. I was the trial counsel. So I'm just referencing what Mr. Patanzo, which is his appellate attorney, has stated in the brief. There is so many errors that it takes a while to even break it down. One of the main errors in my opinion in the case, which I had to sit through, argue, and live it, was the fact that in December of 2020, I filed a witness list. The state's reaction to that was to file a motion saying, we want the court to strike all of his witnesses, that's not even something that's legal or that you could do. You have to itemize who you want stricken. You just can't shotgun approach and say, I want all of his defense witnesses stricken. But the state attorney did that. In a hearing that I had to defend, myself to that in that motion, the court didn't grant that, but the court instructed me to file a pleading, which was the nexus in my defense witnesses and what nexus they had to my theory of defense, which I argued was inappropriate.
Wait, hold up. I remember he said, my boy, do it for a Louis belt. Oh, Dre, you think you slick. Do what for a Louis belt? You think you slick. You think you've been dropping some gangster bars and niggas don't know. I see you. Niggas just turn into a gangster out of nowhere.
Because at the end of the day, you're ordering me to give the state a blueprint of what my defense is going to be. But I was ordered to do it, and I did it. When prior to Mr. Onfroy, which I'll refer to him as X for this interview because his stage name was XXXTENTION, which was the victim in this case. Prior to him being murdered, he had posted on Instagram, if anybody kills me, I'm snitching right now, it's champagne poppy. I'm paraphrasing, but something to that effect, right? So imagine the decedent said prior to his death, if anybody kills me, it's Champagne Poppy, which is Drake's Instagram name. I laid out in extreme detail all of my defense witnesses list, which included many rappers, because at the end of the day, the victim in this case was a rapper. He had feuds, ongoing public feuds with not only Drake, but a lot of rappers that are either signed to OVO or related to Drake in some way, including 600 Breezy, which is a Chicago-based rapper, and a rapper that's from Toronto by the name of, he goes by Top 5, which is Hassan Ali. And I had to lay that all out in detail. The court was fully aware of my theory of defense. Prior to that, I filed a motion to perpetuate the testimony of Livingston Allen, which goes by the name of DJ Academics, because DJ Academics was friends with X and had posted long YouTube, content regarding this beef. He actually posted YouTube saying that he was on the phone with X discussing the issue and the beef that he had with Drake, and specifically, X had either said or posted something about Drake's mom, and he had posted a picture of a Drake lookalike with semen on his face, and he wanted DJ Academics to post it on his own site, and he said, I'm not going to do that. And in that conversation, DJ Academics says that you better be careful because even though, like, and I'm paraphrasing again, even though he's not a gangster, you may be pushing him. As a reaction to that conversation, X goes and says that he takes it out off the post off of his website or off of IG, and he says that his Instagram was hacked. I laid that out in my motion to perpetuate the testimony, which a motion to perpetuate testimony is when you have a witness that is relevant to your defense and that lives beyond the jurisdictional limits of the court, and that you feel that you're not going to be able to bring them into court. So I'm basically asking the court to allow me to go to California or wherever I have to go, depose this individual, and now with his deposition, if he doesn't show up, I could use it in my defense or in my case in chief, right? So I did that, argued it to the court, and the court, in a reaction, basically said, I'm not going to grant your motion to perpetuate testimony, just take his depo. Let's just take it. So, okay, fine. I set a notice of hearing, went and served Drake in his castle in Beverly Hills. The judge enters a rule to show cause, basically saying a purge date. You have to appear for depo on this day, or I'm going to do a writ of bodily attachment. He then goes and hires Brad Cohen, a friend of the show, friend of mine as well, an excellent attorney. And Brad files several motions, motion to quash the subpoena, and he files a motion for protective order. We go back and forth, and the judge says, and the first time that Brad shows up to court, he says, you know what, I'm gonna quash the rule to show cause. He's hired counsel. You guys can communicate and figure out when this step was gonna happen, okay? So we go back and forth. We can't agree to it for various reasons, and I'm not going to get into settlement negotiations
Sure.
on the show, but we can't agree. We go into court February 24th, I believe, on his motions. At that time, James Beard, which is the process server that served Drake, appeared as a witness, and I wanted to show video that he took of the actual attempted service where it shows Drake's bodyguards or the people that are in front of his house refusing to cooperate. It showed one of Drake's employees kicking the subpoena down the road that leads to his mansion. And the judge didn't allow me to show that. Despite not allowing me to put forth that evidence, the judge did a 180 from telling me to figure it out, coordinate it, take the depo, did a 180, told me, why are you involving him? Granted the motion for protective order, granted the motion to quash my subpoena, allowed Mr. Cohen to argue California law without having a California expert there, and basically kind of chastised me about why are you bringing them into it? But the state attorney, sensing there's blood in the water, says, Judge, I'm going to renew my motion to strike all his witnesses, okay? Or tennis, no notice. And he says, I'm not going to do that, but I am going to strike Mr. Graham. So he struck in the middle of the trial. He struck Drake from my witness list, which is completely inappropriate, considering the history of the case.
Yeah, so as you heard in that clip, he's not arguing that his client was innocent. He's arguing that he wasn't given a fair trial because there was other suspects that weren't investigated. And he specifically name drops Drake, 600 Breezy, and Top 5, which is, Drake's shooter from Toronto. That's how he's described himself in the past. I ain't just putting that jacket on him. He said that's what he is. Honestly, it's pretty crazy. Now, from here, what happens is that petition for appeal will be reviewed, and then there will be a response responsive brief that is filed in response to this. And if the appellate court agrees that Drake, 600 Breezy, top 5, they should have been investigated more, then a new trial for Dedrick Williams could be on the table. And in that new trial, I'm assuming if it's granted, we more than likely will have to hear from either one Drake or two Drake's attorney. If that's approved. Now, as far as a timeline for that, I'm not really certain on when it could happen. It could be within the next couple weeks. It might take it a couple months. We all know that the court system can be really slow, especially when it comes to appeals after you've been found guilty. Sometimes them things can take years to get through. So it might be a while before we hear a response to this petition. But you know, there was a lot of evidence. Like I said, I made a video about it years ago, but just a few examples. There was a guy in here named Robert Allen who was on trial for the murder of XXXTENTION. There was images online of Robert Allen throwing up gang signs. There were also images of Drake throwing up the exact same gang signs. Now keep in mind, Robert Allen and them, they're from Florida. Drake is from Canada, but there was more of a connection. Robert Allen's dad is notoriously known and has been convicted of being a drug dealer and a firearm dealer with ties to people in Toronto, right? So there was that. There was a ton of lyrics that Drake had dropped. I'm not going to go through them all right now because it would take forever for me to get through them, but there was a lot of things that seemingly connected Drake to this entire incident that was just overlooked because the judge felt like Drake was too big of a superstar to be involved in it. Like the lawyer said, he struck down Drake and only Drake from his witness list. Everybody else was allowed to come in, give testimony, yada, 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 but not Drake. That was shot down almost immediately, which, I mean, to be fair, nobody is saying that them guys that were convicted are innocent, but the lawyer might be on to something when he says that it's not a fair trial if you're not allowed to introduce all of the information, and there was clearly more information. But yeah, bro, that's what we got. This is not how I expected this week to develop. After Drake sued UMG, all of a sudden, boom, he's being implicated in the murder of X. Crazy stuff. But yeah, bro, y'all gotta let me know what y'all think about it in the comments down below. Anyways, that's basically...
Yeah, y'all let me know what y'all think about that situation. But I think this goes to show you, hey, anybody could be a killer if you push them to the limit. Like academics told him, he said, bro, you might, he's saying no gangster, but you pushing him at this point. We don't know if he did it. We don't know for sure. But I don't know, bro. It looked kind of suspicious for Drizzy. But I really think Drizzy made a bad chess move when he decided to sue the record label he signed to. Them folks is on a whole nother level. I think that was a bad mistake from Drizzy. You feel me? But yeah, man. Y'all tell me what y'all think about the video in the comments and what's gonna come out from this, because woof, boy, we gonna see. Drake could be another Diddy. Be safe out here, kings and queens. Let's get it.